Hey guys, what's up? It's Srisavasdi with the CinemAddicts podcast. For this week's installment of Hodgepod, co-host Eric Holmes has a trio of interviews. Actually, he has a lot more interviews from this movie, but I'll get to that in a second. For this movie called Scared to Death, one of the films that Eric Holmes is covering this week, and he's pumped up to actually review the movie this week on CinemAddicts on our main episode. But for this installment, we have a Hodgepod collection of 3 interviews. These interviews are with actress Lin Shaye, actor Bill Moseley, and filmmaker Paul Boyd. So again, first you gotta get Lin Shaye, then Bill Moseley, 2 cinematic icons, and then you have Scottish filmmaker Paul Boyd. All 3 of them talk about their new film, Scared to Death, which hits theaters Friday, March 13th, also known as Friday the 13th. Eric will have a review of the film on this week's main show, and hopefully I will get to reviewing Scared to Death as well. So really excited about this movie. Let me go on their scaredtodeathmovie.com site for a little bit more of a just generic read on what this movie is about. Here we go. Scared to Death is a, quote, supernatural horror film with a dark comedic twist following a group of ambitious filmmakers who gather at an abandoned children's orphanage to conduct research for their next movie. A decision that quickly spirals into terror. What begins as a creative exploration turns into a chilling encounter with forces far beyond their control. Written and directed by Paul Boyd and produced by Eric Barrett at Mirror Films, the film stars horror legends Lin Shaye and Bill Moseley alongside Kurt Deimer in a standout performance that, quote, adds intensity and unpredictability to the unfolding nightmare. Again, for more information on this movie, go to scaredtodeathmovie.com, or even more information, go see the movie yourself on Friday the 13th. There's going to be a lot of stuff. Kurt Deimer is not in this Hodgepod, but Eric interviewed Kurt, and that interview is available on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. We're currently at around 899 subscribers, so if you can and support us on CinemAddicts, please subscribe to our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. Our weekly podcasts and Hodgepod installments are there to listen to ad-free. If you listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever podcasts you use on digital platforms, those come with ads. Thank you for listening to that on those platforms. But on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel, they come ad-free as well for our Patreon patrons. They're free as well. All right, that's it. Enough of me. If you want to listen to what we're going to cover this week on CinemAddicts, I will have a brief rundown after the end of the Paul Boyd interview at the end of this podcast. So just stay tuned for that. But anyways, here is, again, back to back to back. First Lin Shaye, then Bill Moseley, then Paul Boyd. Okay, take care, guys. Thanks for supporting us on CinemAddicts. And again, wait after the Paul Boyd interview for more information on this week's main episode for CinemAddicts. Take care. And again, thank you guys for your support.
Greatest actor right there.
Oh my God, with her mouth wide open, ready for anything.
I'm here with Lin Shaye, and anyone who listens to the podcast knows I'm a huge fan of yours, so I'm incredibly excited to be talking to you. And
thank you.
Yeah, not only are you starring in Scared to Death, but you're the producer. So what brought you onto this project? And as I ask any producer, because you ask 100 different producers what they do, that you get 100 different answers. What's your role as a producer on this particular movie?
You know, it actually didn't, it's sort of a behind the scenes thing. And, you know, there's credits, like what you're credited with and do. I never quite understand how that all works. You know, but for me, honestly, personally, it was not, I wasn't giving instructions on set to anybody. I was more asking for direction for where am I supposed to be. So I can honestly say I'm not as much, I didn't feel as much of a producer as just an actress and an actor in the storyline. It's, you know, I honestly, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of there's a whole bunch of stuff about that, about what your credit is, and that has to do with back ends and front ends and middles. I mean, it's very complicated. But mostly I enjoyed acting, which is what I love the most. And I don't even really want to be a director. I love acting. I love figuring out what could be next and coming up with different character ideas that come from the story themselves. And it's a constant it's a constant juggling act in a really wonderful way when you're given a script and story and finding where you fit and then what you can add to what it is or subtract what you think in order to make the story and character stronger. So mostly I was an actress on the film, I would say, but I'm glad to have the credit as producer.
What kind of, so when you get a script, because your characters, a lot of it, I just wonder, like, how the hell did this even look on the page? And you bring so much to all the different characters you play. When you get a script, what's kind of going through your head and how are you breaking down that character? Or how are you deciding, oh, I'm going to say the line this way or I'm going to perform it this way? Or like, because I'm not an actor, so if you kind of speak to me like I'm three, sort of describe that.
It's a moment by moment reality. I mean, I've sometimes, there's so many different levels from the first time you get a script and you read the character. And the first thing I do is pull out my pencil and just, even dumb thoughts, if it's a color or a pair of shoes or any thought that comes through my mind as I'm reading it for the first time, because those never come back. That's something kind of important to, I think, remember, because you can't go, oh, I'll remember that later. No, you won't. I won't anyway. Maybe someone else would, but I would. And you kind of start to get an idea. I work a lot physically in terms of, believe it or not, shoes and wardrobe and what inspires what in the story inspires what she has on or what. And I love to collaborate with wardrobe and with props and everybody else on the set if I have some ideas to communicate them. And then you get on set sometimes and it's totally different. It's like everything you thought about it was going to be. It's not any of that. And for me, there's always that, I mean, where I thought it was going to be over here, but instead I'm at the piano, and I'm not very good at hiding that either. And you just have to literally go with the flow, if something, and allow that to change something you have thought about. You can't hang on. I've discovered it's not a good thing to hang on to what you've decided to do, except sometimes. So there's no real rule, because sometimes to hang on to what you thought you should do impacts everything else around you in a good way. In other words, if you give in to, they don't want me to be standing there, but if I'm standing there, then that opens up the opportunity for X, Y, and Z to happen, and that can impact the entire scene. And if you can be articulate about it and show, and it's tricky. You got to be articulate and open at the same time. You got to be able to change on a dime. The director doesn't want that. You got all of a sudden a new coat you have on that you don't remember was ever in the story. And now you've got another physical thing to deal with. So everything is always in motion and very alive. And so the initial reading of the script, I think it's important to take your original little notes and don't forget about them and go back to them occasionally. And it's from there, the building, it's like building a snowman. You put a little bit, it melts over there. You got to put the thing back on again, or you got to put it a new way so it's not in the sun, or, it's kind of, you're constantly in motion. And I think the more malleable you are like that, the more successful and more fun you'll have in the project.
Well, speaking of best laid plans, what were some of the surprises you've had on this? Like, because you say you have kind of your idea of what you want to do, but what was some kind of curveballs you got thrown in this where it's like, wasn't expecting that, but man, that worked out great.
Well, some of it is in the working of a scene. That scene I have with, oh my God, I'm blanking on the lead's name, who's that wonderful actor who is, I'm just blanking on his first name.
Moseley? Oliver Paris?
Yeah, who plays the young guy who was trying to make his way as a videographer. He's a wonderful actor and very living, in the moment and stuff. And there's a scene we have where it's kind of written where she's kind of just being nasty to him, and I tell him to get me coffee. I think it's that one scene, and it shifted where suddenly I felt the character change because of what he was giving me. And also it kind of went against, when someone's nasty all the time to somebody, there's so much more going on than that. I mean, we know there is, that's the product of something else that's going on with you. It could be, an old habit, or it could be that you really hate this person for a certain reason, or you don't want to let them into your life. You make up those choices, I think, both as a person and as an actor as you go through life. And I just remember there being that moment of like, come here, let's, and the whole scene takes a shift where suddenly there's a softness between the two of them. And she kind of compliments him at the end of the scene. I forget what the line is, but she's kind of saying to him, good job. You're doing a good job.
You finally grew up here, I think is what it was.
Yeah, I think you finally grew up here. Thank you.
But yeah, Scared to Death comes out in theaters March 13th, which is, this would be a great movie to watch with a group for sure, because it's an incredible amount of fun.
100%.
Before I let you go, I just want to get a movie recommendation from you, a movie that's either personal to you or a movie that's like, this one's really good and not enough people talk about it. And you have also a second one, you have such an extensive filmography yourself. What's a movie of yours that's like, this was really good and just did not take off the way I wish it would?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I can even think of one really, because I mean, there's so many different aspects that make a film be commercial or be popular or be successful. And it's often not the things you think. So I think I approach everything from a smaller place. It's just starting from the beginning, literally like always trying to do my best and offer suggestions. And the way it's handled when it's being released, that you have no control over really at all. I mean, that's up to the studios or to the people who are your distribution arm and stuff. So I think it's really, you just do your best, and if you have a suggestion, I mean, when to release a movie is a big deal, but I don't understand that part of it. You understand the summer because kids are out of school and they want to see that kind of a movie. You don't want to release it in the fall when they're going back to college, and then they don't want to see, so there's those experts who give you all that information. But I stick pretty close to home in terms of my contributions and what I think I can help with, and help make the movie better. I'm very vocal if a scene is not working, if I have a suggestion that I think might make it better, and sometimes not. Sometimes you just have to have it the way it is, and you do the best with the dialogue you've been given and, the situation. So it's always very fluid, and it's always fun. It's always fun and interesting. Sometimes not so much fun, but it's always interesting.
Well, Lin, again, huge fan. Thanks for joining me, and welcome back anytime. I would love to have you. And everyone go check out Scared to Death.
Scared to Death is opening on, is it March? It's Friday, March 13th.
Yep, that's correct.
Friday 13th is what I kept thinking. Friday, March 13th. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's an exciting movie and changes throughout in different ways. You're going to experience all kinds of different feelings from it too. So thank you so much. It's also a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. I'm here with Bill Moseley, star of Scared to Death and many other horror movies. And I kind of want to start with this because you're known as a horror guy. And there's certain people that like they get lumped into a certain genre and they kind of like, oh yeah, it's they kind of feel a way about it. You come off as a guy that sort of loves this. And there's a lot of crossover between horror and metal. And they're both genres that are looked down upon. And there's people that kind of feel a way about being it, and there's people that like really embrace it. What is it about the horror genre that you kind of take home with you that you champion?
Well, I've always been a horror fan, even when I was a kid. I think the first horror movie I ever saw. Yeah, well, actually, I was over at the sleepover at a kid named Christopher English in 6th grade, and his dad, who was the editor of Downbeat magazine, unspooled. It was Creature from the Black Lagoon. He had it on like 8mm, 16mm, and we saw that. I think that was my first horror movie. And the first one in the theater was The Fly and the Return of the Fly, which I saw on a double bill. My mom took me, and that was in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and not Crystal Lake with Jason Voorhees, but Crystal Lake, Illinois, next to my hometown of Barrington. It scared the shit out of me. And I also saw The Blob when I was a little boy because my grandmother took me to see it in a theater in New York City. And, it scared the shit out of me. For some reason, I just love that. So I've just been a horror fan all my life. And still in it, still doing it, and still loving it.
It's a pretty versatile genre. It's kind of some of your favorite genres and some of your favorite movies that kind of maybe like progressed the genre or, moved it forward a bit.
Well, I'm a big fan of The Brain That Wouldn't Die. So like 50s, movies. I do like, let's see here, Carnival of Souls is one of my favorite old movies. I love Evil Dead 2, so much so that I wrote Sam Raimi a letter and ended up in Evil Dead 3, Army of Darkness. I certainly completely freaked out at Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And, lo and behold, 11 years later, I end up in Chainsaw 2. And I loved the original Night of the Living Dead. And lo and behold, right after Chainsaw 2, I end up in the remake, the color remake with Tom Savini, whom I met on Texas Chainsaw 2. So, it's just funny how it kind of, you put that love out there and somehow, some way, it just keeps, coming back to you.
There any other franchises you want to put out there that, man, Bill Moseley would like to be in this and maybe be in the next one?
Well, I was kind of, I'm certainly, got fingers crossed for Terrifier 4, but, who knows? And so that would be kind of cool. That's really kind of the one franchise I'm kind of focused on right now. And of course, the adjunct is Stream. So, it's all those Staten Island guys. And other than that, I'm pretty good. I still keep working. I've got about 3 or 4 movies lined up for this, 2026. So I'm certainly, I'm making my benefits. That's how we describe it in the Screen Actors Guild.
When you get approached with a project, what's kind of some of the secret sauce versus that gets you real excited about it versus like, yeah, I'll do it, I'm not doing anything that weekend, versus, ooh, I really, really want to do this?
That's a great question, Eric. And I got to say that this just about a week ago, I did a day on a movie called Gulf of America. And, it wasn't exactly, it wasn't a huge payday. It wasn't a big part. But the part that I had was basically, it contained a monologue that was so cool and so well written. I just said, look, I'm doing this no matter what. So that's, that can still get my attention. I do a lot of, I'd say, kind of blue collar stuff because I love working. I love trying to come up with new characters and thinking new thoughts. I love encouraging young filmmakers, and I love to, kind of show how you can, hire an actor that's been around the block a little bit that isn't an asshole. So that's also important.
Actually, in Scared to Death, it kind of deals with that a bit. There's some, we'll say some a-hole people, because it's a film crew filming a seance.
Yes.
And there's some a-holes in the film crew. Is that something you deal with? And then how do you deal with it after the fact? Do you just not go back to them, or does word travel and you don't even get involved in that? Or how does that sort of thing work?
You mean like, do I have a hit list of people I worked with once and will never work with again?
Maybe you just heard something that's like, this seems like an interesting project. I don't need to work with that person. I don't need that in my life.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I've done it enough so that's really not a factor. I mean, what I do is I read the script, and if it's low budget and they don't have a special effects guy, and one of the scenes has me, chained to the back of a Jeep and dragged over a gravel road, I don't think I'm going to do that, or I'm going to get some clarity. Let's put it that way. And I've had that happen before too. Of the old, the stunt guy was actually the kid that delivers the newspaper in the morning on his bicycle route. And, I'm sure everything's going to be fine. We're just going to light you on fire. It's like, I don't think so, pal. I mean, I think that, the two, for me, the two important criteria are the check clears and I don't get hurt.
What's one of the more fun things you got to do? Because, people get putting makeup, get all bloody and messy, and that can be fun to some people, annoying to other people. But like, what's some stuff you did on set where it was like, you just look back and go, man, that was cool. I'm glad I did that.
Well, certainly Texas Chainsaw 2, getting made up as Chop Top every day. I mean, I think it was 3.5 hours of makeup every morning. And then it was an hour and a half at the end of the day to take it off. So that's 5 hours in the chair right there before, you even punch the clock. But I love Chop Top, and I still have my plate, I have my teeth, I have my straight razor. So that's kind of cool. I did like, I was in Rebo, the Genetic Opera, and I was offered the part by Darren Bousman. I was offered the part of either Pavi or Luigi. And Pavi was played, incredibly played by Ogre of Skinny Puppy. But Pavi has, this fake face and, so he had to spend some time in the chair. And Luigi, my character, does not have any makeup, but although when I tear my shirt open, you see some scars. But, so I actually went to Luigi because I thought, if I do Luigi, I'm going to probably, have an extra, 10 or 12 hours out of the chair. And so sometimes I think strategically like that, but not often.
Excellent. Well, let's see, Scared to Death comes out Friday, March 13th.
Oh, yeah, Scared to Death.
Theaters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The movie we're talking about, which is a fun horror comedy.
Yeah.
But I already got a couple of movie recommendations from you, but I want to get a specific one from you. One that's either real personal or a movie that's like, this one's really good and not enough talk about it. And on top of that, get one from, because you got an extensive filmography. What's a movie from your filmography that's like, this one just didn't hit and I wish it did because it's really good and not enough people seen it?
Well, that would be Prisoners of the Ghostland, Sion Sono. I did that a couple years ago in Japan, right before COVID, in fact, with Nicolas Cage. And that was certainly it was a great experience. Now, whether the film itself, should be seen by more people, I mean, that's a personal choice, of course. But yeah, it was a great experience. And what was the other? Let's quickly talk about Scared to Death. I wanted to say that
Yeah, go ahead.
it was fun, acting with Lin Shaye. She is a hoot. I've worked with her on Gothic Harvest and 2001 Maniacs, Field of Screams. So I know Lin, we're old buddies, and she's awesome. And when I found out she was really one of the stars of this movie, it made it so much easier to say yes to it. Also, it was great to work with the director, Paul Boyd, and the new kid on the block, the Grog, Kurt Dimer. It was a lot of fun. Also, I got to say that my wife is in this movie. She is the cop at the very beginning, at the very end, interviewing Olivier Paris, who also did a fantastic job. I think everybody did. It was a lot of fun. It was a great ensemble. I will say that we shot the movie at an old house called the Woodbury Story House in Altadena, California. And I just because I was worried about it, I drove there last night just to see if I could find it. I didn't know if it had burned down or not in the Altadena fire last year. And it's still around. So that's very cool. Also, I also did two other jobs there. It's like a famous movie house. One of them was a short film called Gingerbread, where I played Abraham Lincoln, and Amanda Plummer plays my wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. And then I also did a Slayer video there called Repentless. Oh. And at the very, I was in the third of the trilogy, and I end up stabbing Danny Trejo, which I've certainly done before in movies. So I did it with love.
Well, Bill, it's been a pleasure to have you. Big fan, and thanks for joining me. And next time you start a circle, keep Johnny out of it. He's just going to break the circle every time. But
I know. Well, I banged my head on a tabletop, and the stunt guy only had like a very thin little rubber mat that was about the size of a heating pad, and so my head still hurts from that. I really did bang down. So that's method acting for you.
There you go. Well, congratulations on the movie, and thanks for joining me.
All right, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm here with Paul Boyd, writer and director of Scared to Death. I guess we'll start off with what brought this project together.
I bought a house 20 years ago, and the day before we moved in, when we got the keys, the owner of the house said, "Oh, this house is haunted, by the way." And, USC were here doing all these experiments in the 70s and blah, 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 and convinced the family that the house was haunted. So it was really about believing is seeing, the people in the house. Some people saw ghosts, some people didn't. It was interesting. And I never saw anything. I would be up in the middle of the night walking around the house, So it started with a real experience of what we thought was living in a haunted house. And then that combined with my experience, write about what you know. I'm in the film business. I know film people. I know the dynamics and the paradigm of those kind of relationships. So it was a combination of that, trying to make something silly and funny and scary at the same time.
In the movie, Lin Shaye's character especially kind of portrayed as not a very good set to be working on or good group of people. But
Yeah.
the interviews I've had so far, it seems that that's not exactly the experience you've had on this set.
No,
Have you experienced anything like that in the past?
oh my God, yeah. I mean, I did 25 years of music videos and commercials. So we've been through the gamut of every potential calamity that can that can happen. And also the good things. But the film is a satire. It's a horror movie about how people treat one another. She's really the monster in the movie. But it's her own history. And to me, it was kind of leaning into that, embracing all the cliches, the haunted house, the orphans. It was kind of playing into that, the seance, and just to try and kind of turn it on its head a little and make something that's satirical but funny, and scary at the same time. So it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, Victoria said you guys were shooting in a haunted house,
Yeah.
not dissimilar from what's portrayed in the movie, albeit probably not with actual ghosts killing people throughout the set, but.
Yeah, we filmed in the oldest house in Altadena, and it actually survived the fire, which was incredible. And yeah, it was plug and play. Like, we needed to find a house that had everything, and that was very challenging because we had a basement and attic. I mean, it was very challenging. But I'd seen this house years before, and I didn't realize that was the same place. And my producer lived out there, and he found the house. He goes, "I found the perfect place," and we went and scouted it, and it had everything. It was almost written to be in there. And it is a character. It's been in a lot of horror movies. So I figured, it just worked, made it easy for us. And the owner, great. And yeah, it was a great experience, that house. We didn't have to do much. All the furniture, all the props. I mean, the house was meant to be empty anyway in our film. So they furnished the entire, we found everything in the house. It was great.
Yeah. What's it like kind of what's your background in horror and comedy? Because they're both kind of, very similar, but also
Very
at the
similar.
same time, it direct opposite poles, but for some reason they go together well.
They do, yeah, the tragedy and the comedy. Yeah, it's my first film was a drama, Vicious Circle. The second was a comedy. The third was a psychological horror. So to me, I jumped genre. Do you know what I mean? I just want to make horror movies. I make all different kinds of stories, just stuff that interests me as a writer. But I also write about what I know. A lot of my stuff is family dynamic, which this is too. It's kind of a family of people. So I try and mix it up. I'm trying to really. I'm learning as I'm writing too. I started as a cameraman, director as a teenager, and made films, went to fine art film school, came up through videos and commercials, been writing for years. I was writing for at least 10, 12 years before I ever tried to make a film. So it's been a kind of evolving, amorphous process for me. It's not, I want to just make scary horror movies. I'm kind of want to do a bit of everything.
Yeah. But also you're a writer director. So when you're starting a project and it's something you're going to bring to completion, it's something you got to be with for a while. Do you ever have anything like you're writing or you have an idea and you get like maybe a certain way and it's like, this ain't it, and then you just got to scrap it? Or do you usually have an idea that this is what you're going to stick with right from the jump?
I think, I see myself kind of like an antenna. Do you know what I mean? Like the ideas come and I pluck them from the sky, or something will just inspire an idea, and then I'll flesh it all out as a synopsis, and then get maybe halfway through that and go, you know what, there's not really there, and then put it aside. I never throw anything out. I have a bin where there's all the projects, and then that's the thing. Some projects have taken 10 years. Some projects get written in 2 or 3 months. I've written 25 scripts, so it's different every time. But what I do, and the thing is, it's an interesting question, because for the longest time, I had like 15 unfinished films, project scripts, because I would get so far and I just wouldn't, I'd give up or I'd jump onto something else. And then what I learned to do was to break it down into an equation of writing 3 pages a day for 30 days and delivering the 3 pages to myself, not, copying out. And then at the end of the month, I'll have 90 pages, good or bad. And before I do those 90 pages, I'll work on the story and the synopsis and what I think it is, and then I'll just dive in. And I've found that process has made a big difference, because I actually get to the end of the draft rather than get halfway through and stop. I just force myself to go all the way through over those 30 days. And then going back in and editing is much easier than, starting again, or, stopping and starting. So that's the process.
I love that you said that, the good or bad, because I think a lot of things that aspiring writers for or don't seem to take into consideration is that the first draft's not supposed to be the final draft. You just need to get it done and then go back and fix what needs to be fixed.
Exactly. And you can even go through something after you've done it and you think it's great. And then, one thing can take you in a different direction. You know what I mean? But I often find taking time away from something is good too, even if you do consider it a final draft. Take a couple of months, go back and read it. But the thing is, the urgency behind when you write something, you want to get it, you want someone to read it straight away. Oh, what do you think? As soon as you've got it done. And I do that sometimes on first, second draft. I'll give it to some inner core of people, 6 or 7 people. Go, what do you think? And because it's great, you can get initial reactions to whether something's even connecting or not, pretty much straight away. So, I rely on the advice of people that I trust too. But again, it's such a singular thing. Like writing, it's so subjective. I have to write for myself. I have to write for what I think I want to see. And to be honest, when I'm making movies, I'm not just thinking about the audience. I'm thinking, what do I want? How do I want this to play out? They are for an audience, but it's such a personal thing for me because I've been doing it since I was a teenager. It's not like a job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think is like kind of most important when writing a screenplay, as far as like not so much the content of the screenplay, but what's like an important element to have in a screenplay? Because you figure like you want it to be easy to read, but you also want it to be, have clarity. And it is also a document that people need to be able to read and understand, okay, this is what we need the set to look like, or this is what we need the characters to look like, that sort of thing.
I think it's the escalation of action, right? And constant surprises, and then kind of like, the economy of shots. To me, it's not about overcutting it. It's kind of, the escalation of action is important because sometimes you get to a point in the film where you kind of feel like and then you've got it starts again, and you get these constant highs and lows. For me, it's the bomb under the table. It's Hitchcock, right? It's this kind of ticking time bomb where something's not right. And that all comes out through Lin. Initially, because something's going to go horribly wrong with this person, who's just being so horrible to everybody. So it's that. It's an escalation of action, constant surprises, an economy of story, and those 3 things I follow that. But, also, I think as a writer, it's not about formula. Do you know what I mean? There's certain hints and paths you can follow. But to me, the one thing I don't want to do is have my scripts follow some formula every time. Follow this. I just, I want to be more experimental than that, and try and burn my own path a little rather than just follow convention, which is, it's a hard thing to do because it's all about convention and storytelling. There's techniques, there's methods, effective, non-effective. But for me, I want to take risks. Some things are not going to work, and I embrace that too. I'm not afraid of that. I'm more afraid of just not digging in 100%, rather than just, I'm not worried about it not working. You know what I mean? Because that's how you learn, right? Is by diving in and really going for it, and then you figure out whether something works or not. It's going to be interesting with this. I hope people have been connecting with it so far, but you never know, right? You never know with films what's going to click and what doesn't.
I mean, that's kind of true of comedy in general. It's like, you can write what you think is the funniest thing ever, and then there's going to be that one person, I didn't laugh one time. It's like, well, I did, so I don't know what to tell you.
It's so true. It's so true. And that's the beauty of films too, man. They're polarizing. Like, if you say anything against a Christopher Nolan movie, it's like, yeah, it's funny. It's like that. People are so polarized over movies, and I love that. I think that's what makes film, is that, everyone's got their own taste, and it, the strangest people like the wildest stuff, people you can never imagine. And I love that. You just never know what someone's taste is. Especially with movies, especially the horror. It's so interesting because people are so devoted to it. But everything's been done in horror. That's the thing with Peter Jackson's horror, the most gory, the most intense, the most terrifying. It's been done. I mean, The Exorcist. I mean, do you know what I mean? How are you going to top that for fear and scares? And so to me, that's not really what it's about. It's not about making the scariest thing. And that's why even the title, Scared to Death. I was surprised that title had only been in one film from the 40s. I'm like, how's that not been used? I was scratching my head, because I thought, "God, isn't that a title that's going to get people to see it? They'll be, oh, that's going to be scary." And that was part of our thing was, put it in the title and then make it funny,
Well, yeah, that worked out pretty good. When we're talking about like the stuff that you wrote and you're directing. I mean, you've been at this for a while. What's some tools that Paul Boyd today has that the Paul Boyd that started out would just like, oh, this would have been great had I known this way back in the day.
Oh my God. It's the song, isn't it? I wish I knew what I knew now when I was younger.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God. So many things I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I just cringe on it. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. It's patience. It's been able to kind of be objective and step back and look at the situation because I've been there before so many times, and it's really the experience more than anything. It has just taught me, it's a wave. I believe it's a wave. It's like when you're down, it's coming up, and when you're up, it's going to come down, and I believe that for everything, story, jobs, work, so I just ride this wave. I kind of take the highs with the lows, and I try and put that in my work too, the balance of how life is like, ebb and flow. Do you know what I mean? It's the ups and downs. And so that's it. More than anything else, it's the experience. I mean, obviously, I know how my technique is much more honed now than it was 30 years ago. Lighting, camera, shot design, production design, styling, makeup, all, I've got a much better handle on all that. But I think also the writing allows you to do that because as you write, you kind of dig into characters more. You're not just showing up to direct actors. You're actually thinking about every element of the character. So that's interesting. And it's so easy to become over obsessed with all that. And I just try and hire a really amazing team that I know are going to deliver and then try not to micromanage. That's one thing. Micromanaging. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. It was about control over every department. And now it's not about that. It's about letting people bring their best to it rather than me saying it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that,
Well, speaking of crew, I see that like you've worked with some similar people in the past, and it looks like you're going to work with them again on your one feature after this one. Do you have like a core group of people like these are like, these people are always going to, I'm not making a movie without these people, just period.
I mean, look, kind of, I have a first AC who has become a DP, and the DP, the cinematographer of this film, Stephen Poster, who, did Donnie Darko. I mean, he's incredible. My assistant has assisted me as because I'm a cameraman too for years, and my assistant is my producer's son. He started working with us when he was 15. He just DP'd my last film last year, Relapse, that we're starting to put into festivals. So my producer I've known for 26 years, like my sound guys, we work with the same people, but a lot of the times they're not available. And then when you're doing stuff that's low budget, not everyone's willing to play ball, the rates and all that, it's finding those people that just believe and you get that by treating people well and by giving them repeat business. Do you know what I mean? The repeat business that we give people is what makes them show up when we need favors and stuff like that, so, and I believe it's a family, but, in this town also, on this film, based on, the way that we put it together, we had to shift, there were different grips coming in and, the crew kind of had to shift and move a little bit based on availability. So being able to not freak out and understand that and just stay on track, even though crew members are shifting. It's like, people think directing's one thing, it's the creative, but it's not. It's you've got 30 minutes, you get 3 shots to get, the sun's going down over the horizon. That's directing is like how do you deal with these things in the moment and find solutions to get out of problems and scenarios that happen all day long without losing your shit and panicking or, that is a big part of directing, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so Scared to Death comes out Friday the 13th. March Friday the 13th. And before I let you go, just want to get a movie recommendation from you. Either a movie that's like personal to you or this one's really good and not enough people talk about it.
God, I saw Begonia last year. I didn't, I'm not a huge fan of his movies. He's brilliant. Obviously, that movie just, I don't know what it was about that movie, man. It just got me. It just tickled me pink. I thought it was brilliant. It just laughed my ass off the whole time. And Sentimental Value, I just saw that too. I love all movies. I see everything. I love all films, but those two specifically, I really enjoyed. Like One Battle After Another, that kind of went over me. A lot of the big films this year just went over me a little. I haven't seen Marty Supreme. I want to see that. I heard that's really something else.
It's if you've seen Uncut Gems, it's kind of more of that. Just
Yeah.
anxious porn, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. I liked Uncut Gems. That was definitely a adrenaline ride.
Yeah. But yeah, Paul, thanks for joining me. Wish you all the luck on Scared to Death, and congratulations on it. It's funny, it's gross, it's all the things you want in a horror comedy, and I look forward to seeing Relapse when that comes out.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, Eric. Thanks for taking the time, buddy.
All right, thank you.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg Srisavasdi again. Here are the movies that we're covering this week on CinemAddicts episode 335 for the week beginning Friday, March 13th. Again, Eric Holmes has already seen Scared to Death. That's one of the movies he's going to review. There's an original Shudder release called Body Cam. I've seen it. Bruce has already seen it, so we will do our respective reviews on the podcast. There's a movie release called My Father's Shadow that is being covered by Bruce. Last but not least is a film called Group, the Schopenhauer Effect, that was seen and covered by Eric Holmes. He has interviews, I think, that will be going up this week. For that, he just completed the interviews yesterday. So those are 4 films. Again, Body Cam, Scared to Death, My Father's Shadow, and Group, the Schopenhauer Effect. And movies that just did not make the cut because we are not, at least as of Wednesday, that have not made the cut or haven't been seen yet, are the films Pompeii, Below the Clouds, and Slanted. Who knows, maybe 1 or 2, or maybe none of these 2 movies will be covered. If not, or if we do, that'd be great. Hopefully, I think I'm going to try to get Slanted in before Thursday. But again, the 4 movies we're covering that's in effect is Body Cam, Scared to Death, My Father's Shadow, and Group, the Schopenhauer Effect. Thank you guys so much for supporting us on CinemAddicts. Hopefully, would love to hear your thoughts on Scared to Death. Hit us up on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel, our CinemAddicts Facebook group. Email me at editor@deepestdream.com. And yeah, I'm going to be more social with CinemAddicts this year. And because me, Bruce, and Eric were basically like animals that burrow in the ground, we release the content and the reviews, and we have a CinemAddicts movie group that Bruce and Eric are really active on. But other than that, our social media presence is pretty much non-existent. And hopefully this year I'll be doing a few steps to change that, and we'll see where that goes from there. But most importantly, tell us what you think of Scared to Death and all these other movies we're going to cover this week. Take care, guys. Have a great week.